Hi, I'm Christina Trauthwein, Editor-in-Chief of Hotel Business and Inspired
Where am I
Design.
looking?
Welcome to the launch of
Okay.
Hot Topics in partnership with Next Events. I'm joined today by my partner, publisher Alan Rolleri, and we are honored to welcome our two guests to today's Power Hour Leadership Lessons. Jim Allen, Chairman of Hard Rock International and CEO of Seminole Gaming, and Randy Levine, President of the New York Yankees. Welcome, gentlemen.
So nice to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Great. It's more important than ever that industry leaders come together and share ideas to help us all navigate these challenging times. So through our new virtual platform, we aim to bring community, engagement, and education to our industry peers.
So as Christina said, my name is Alan Rolleri. I'm the publisher of the hotel group here. And we could not bring you this exciting discussion without the support of our partners, Hotel Equities and Collectible. So we want to thank you both. We're really looking forward to hearing the insights from these two iconic brand leaders, Hard Rock and the New York Yankees, as we address everything from managing during a crisis to the road to recovery. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Christina to kick off our questions.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, before we get started on some other topics, I just thought we would talk a little bit about the history between Hard Rock and the New York Yankees. For instance, I know there's a presence of a Hard Rock Cafe at Yankee Stadium and NYY Steak in Yankee Stadium. So how do two giant and iconic brands identify strategic alliances and partnerships? Can you talk about that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Randy.
Thanks, Jim. And we at the Yankees, our brand is very important, and we are committed to only have partnerships with brands that are honorable, that are driven for excellence, and that are committed to a real partnership. And Jim and Hard Rock hit all of those categories. So when we were building the stadium, we were looking around for a partner to put a restaurant in that had some great appeal. And of course, Hard Rock fit the bill. So originally it was going to be a Hard Rock Cafe. And then we came up with the idea of creating a steakhouse brand, NYY Steak. Jim was a great leader in doing that, along with our people. And it's been extraordinarily well done, successful. We have a NYY Steak here at the stadium during the season. When fans are here, you can't get a table. It's great. We had one in Manhattan that lasted many years. It's now closed, but I believe it will reappear. And there are others in Florida. So Hard Rock and Jim Allen is a great leader. Hard Rock's a great brand, and two iconic brands together always work. So it's worked great for us.
Okay, good, Jim.
Yeah, very echoing Randy's comments. Certainly, we've had so many opportunities to be involved with other sports teams, not because we're involved, because it's frankly factual. There's no other brand like the New York Yankees in any sport. So we certainly understood the significance of the potential relationship. Ironically, Randy may not even be aware of this, but I had a colleague at Merrill Lynch that knew relationships with the Yankees and frankly, Mr. Steinbrenner from an accounting standpoint that went back many years. And that's how I was introduced to Lon. And we submitted our ideas, and we're very fortunate to be chosen by them. It was a great opportunity for our brand. We do believe that there will be another NYY Steak in New York City. We're very hopeful that we'll get to the finish line with the brand so that we can open in the new Hard Rock Hotel that's under construction in Times Square. So certainly as we looked at the globe with our brand and the recognition that the Yankees have, we always felt that it was more than just something in New York City. We've worked together on our project in Japan. So, obviously with some of the Yankee players there. So there's been a lot of history, and candidly, I'm committed long-term to the relationship because I think it has much more success in the future for both of us.
Okay. Now, Jim, you just mentioned actually the Hard Rock Hotel in New York City, and I understand, I think you just celebrated its topping out, if I remember correctly. What are some of the other construction milestones we have to look forward to or an estimated opening? And also, why is New York City such an important market for Hard Rock? And also, is there any concern about the timing of this in New York City, considering the market and some of the challenges the city is facing for either the hotels or your restaurants?
Well, multiple questions there. So we probably have to take a step backwards, because if we look at Hard Rock, next year is our 50-year anniversary. I've been affiliated with the brand now for it'll be 20 years in November, but 50 years of an amazing success. And the second Hard Rock location was actually up on 57th Street. We made a decision probably about 10, 11 years or so ago to move the Hard Rock Cafe from 57th Street down to Times Square. And frankly, the success has just been absolutely amazing. I mean, that restaurant just does incredibly well, in excess of $50 million in revenue on an annual basis. Clearly one of the leading, if not the highest grossing restaurant in the city of New York. So we love New York City, and we obviously love Times Square. We're very cognizant of what's happening with COVID right now, but separate from our relationships, but ironically, directly and independently tying together, we have a relationship with the Niederlander family, where we entered into a partnership doing Broadway shows for Hard Rock locations on a global basis. So having a brand new Hard Rock hotel in Times Square, that was something that was important to us. And we always discussed that certainly having a great restaurant in the hotel with obviously the tie back to New York and the Yankees was something that we would be very excited about. Candidly, none of us knew when we broke ground that COVID was coming. As far as timing, it's still our schedule to open in the early part of 2022. We are certainly hopeful, like most people, that COVID will start to relax a little bit by summer of 2021. Nobody's really sure what's going to happen with the vaccine. I like to put all the political emotion from the far left or far right, to the side, and let's just focus on the middle. New York City is not going anywhere on a long-term basis. Certainly some challenges short-term, but the Hard Rock brand's been around for 50 years. The Yankees have been around for that much or longer. I think we'll both be fine.
Okay. Randy, do you want to add to that at all?
No, I mean, New York City has gone through troubling times in the past. We've lived through, troubling times in the late 70s, early 80s, and times before that. This was a virus nobody saw coming. Nobody could see it coming. It's inflicted a lot of damage, but the people here and in this country are very, very strong, and we'll get past it. Hopefully, as Jim says, it'll end sooner than later. We'll have a vaccine, but all of the medical experts, I think, have been wrong as many times as they've been right. I just think nobody really understands where this virus is going. So let's hope so. But it's going to take a lot of hard work, and not to sugarcoat it. I'm in New York City, I'm in Manhattan, and I'm here in the Bronx today. It's taken a hit, a real hit, but the people are strong, the brands are strong, and it'll come back. And why I think it's so important for us and the Yankees is we had to play this year, because I think playing baseball gives people a sense of normalcy in their life. And I think people were groping for the feeling of normalcy. It's not normal that we're playing without any fans, but when you're home and watching the games on TV, it's a sense of normalcy. For 3 hours, you don't have to think about the virus. You don't have to think about the politics that are going on and all of the divisive things. And you can just sit back and watch the Yankees or whoever your team is. And that's why we were so committed to play. That's why we are playing. The health and safety of our players and our team was the paramount thing. That's why we have such enormous protocols that have to be followed that take into consideration just about everything. And so far, we've had flare-ups, but so far it's been relatively successful. And that's the power of the Yankees. And what satisfies me is, people who are having a hard time in business or who've suffered some health issues because of the virus, they love talking about the Yankees because it's escapism, and it's something that New Yorkers and Yankee fans all over the world have been talking about, for 100 years. It never ends. The good and the bad, every day. Some people say I'm really smart, and some people say I'm the stupidest person who ever lived. But at least they're talking about us, and that makes us feel good.
Right.
Well, Randy, I absolutely agree. And you bring up hard work, and it's going to take a lot of hard work to get out of this. So let's move to that a little bit. Let's talk about managing, right, during a crisis, one that really none of us have ever seen. How have both of your organizations kept employees safe and sound during this pandemic? And Jim, for Hard Rock, guests, what is your plan moving forward to keep confidence and loyalty post-COVID? Because that's a very big deal, in our industry right now, as far as people's confidence to travel and go back to a stadium when they're open again. And from a psychological standpoint, because that plays into this a lot right now, the psychological well-being of your organizations and its members during this time. So, what is it like managing through this?
So, we, first of all, our business is in 76 countries around the world with, 280 some locations, over 50,000 employees. And we started to see and started dealing with the particular virus, really saw it in our hotel in Shenzhen, China. We had just opened, brand new property, beautiful, really doing well. Then literally China, starts shutting down. That was back in January. So, at the time, as I look backwards, I certainly probably could have done more sooner. But once it hit here in the United States, late February, early March, we made a commitment. Number one, it was going to be about safety of our employees. And can remember why I have significant ownership in Hard Rock. The majority owner is the Seminole tribe of Florida. So we wanted to make sure that the tribal members themselves were protected. And it was about creating protocols in every restaurant, every hotel, every casino, every, online sports, online internet gaming, et cetera, to create something that we refer to as our safe and sound program. We rewrote over 500 pages of standard operating procedures, basically turned the business upside down in order to create protocols so that our guests and employees would be safe. Then I'll conclude with this, and I'm sure Randy has some thoughts here, but we then said we're going to invest in technology. And literally, when you come into our locations, what we're doing is we're utilizing thermal imaging. We immediately have facial recognition. We're immediately taking your body temperature, and we're making sure that when you come into the facility that you have a mask, that we have social distancing, and all the things that have become part of our language now, something frankly we've been doing since late February, early March. And candidly, we've been recognized on a national and global basis as the program being the leader in the industry, something we're very proud of. We're actually growing our business double digit here in Florida, where we are opening at all of our facilities, but one in the gaming division. We are open with our partners in Universal in Orlando. But frankly, right now, the attendance at the theme park is just so low that those occupancies are still, frankly, extremely south of where they were, say, this time last year.
Randy, did you want to add something?
Yes, our business is a little different, but there's a lot of similarities. Once the virus hit, we went to working from home remotely. Technology was really important. Our employees' safety was everything. If they wanted to be tested, we made sure that there was a place that they could be tested. Through our relationship with Columbia Presbyterian, New York Presbyterian, who's our hospital, if they needed medical care, and some of our people needed medical care, they got it, including they couldn't get to Columbia. All the hospitals throughout the metropolitan area were very, very accommodating and really did the right thing. Safety was important, and more important was to instill confidence in our employees that we were there for them, that we believed in them. Once the season was getting rolling, of course, those of us who are involved, baseball has a tier one players, coaches, managers, tier 2 people like me, tier 3 other staff. We get tested frequently, almost every day. It's important. There's as I said, a 180-page protocol book that baseball has put out that we all need to follow. And as Jim said, safety is first. Thanks to technology, we've been able to be together, work together, communicate together, drive our business. It's been tough because most of our revenue is associated with playing games in the stadium. So, we're losing revenue from ticket sales and suite sales and people eating and drinking in the stadium. Signage, due to the limited number of games, our television radio contracts have been affected, but we were prepared for it, and hopefully next year we'll get back to a sense of normalcy. But our employees needed to feel connected, needed to feel that they were safe, and if they got sick, we were here for them, and I think we accomplished those things.
Okay.
That's great. So talking about employees, it's one thing to be a leader when times are good, right? But true leaders emerge during these times, right? During the difficult times of crisis. So how important is it to identify, cultivate, and reward good leadership in your organizations in today's environment? And, when normal performance metrics like revenue, Randy, you brought up, there's nobody at the stadiums, nobody's buying food, nobody's buying merchandise, so on and so forth, right? So these performance metrics that we normally use for success are not there. So, how then do you evaluate your team and those good leaders right now?
Well, I think any good leader has to have several characteristics. One, has to be nimble and has to be flexible and have to be able to deal with situations as they change. Even in good times, that has to happen. Has to have confidence in themselves, has to be able to meet the challenge and understand that, it's gonna be good times and bad times, and you're gonna get thrown, curveballs like we all have. So although you can't produce revenue in the way you can, the idea is find a way to produce revenue. How else would you do it? As Jim just talked about, online. There are other ways. We have virtual signage, sell virtual signage, find new sponsors that maybe weren't interested in baseball or the Yankees then, but are now. Find a way to reach young people. We just did a deal with TikTok, who has baseball has a demographic problem, reaching young people.
Yeah.
That's what they're all about, young people. And so the idea is to be nimble, flexible, and try and alter your strategy in the circumstances that you're in, and not being afraid to fail, because it's easy to just throw in the towel in these times. So that's what we expect of our people. They've risen to the occasion, and that's the way we try to lead by example.
Right. And Jim, I want to hear from you, but Randy, I know you're looking to get that young demographic. Just don't change the game too much to get them. The game is not too long. And Jim, you know, with your staff and the leaders in your organization, have you seen them stepping up, and how do you identify that during this time and really keep a team motivated in a very difficult situation?
Yeah, well, 100%. To me, it always starts with commitment, honesty, and integrity. And I think that very similar to Randy, obviously, we got to a day when we said we need to close. We need to close our office buildings. We need to close our hotels, restaurants, casinos, etc. And, that's very unique. I started in the business back in the late 70s, and to not come to a physical place on a daily basis, clearly, that's a little bit of a learning curve for all of us. And what I saw and was frankly very proud of, and just countless thank yous, letters, emails, hugs, tears from our employees, is that they knew we were there for them. I have a place in Jersey, but my main residence is in Fort Lauderdale. And I'll never forget the day that when I was coming out of my house, there were cars everywhere. I'm very close to a couple churches, and I didn't know what was going on. And here to find out that these are people not in old clunker cars, but in newer cars, just looking for a food basket. So I immediately put into play a program where we were still paying all of our employees. We're paying every employee, we paid them for the first month. We're still paying over 6,000 employees benefits that are still have not been brought back to work, about 6,600. But every other week, we actually gave them a $100 food certificate of anyone making $50,000 a year or less. Frankly, tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars. But we wanted to make sure, frankly, that there was food on the table for so many of our employees. Because remember, in our business, yes, we have people in finance and technology and all these areas, but at the same time, we have a lot of people that rely on gratuities and tips. And frankly, when those tips and gratuities are gone, whether you're a cocktail server or a dealer or a maid, and the job classification's a slot attendant, there's no money. And I don't care if you're the New York Yankees or Hard Rock International, so many people in the United States today are really living on 2 or 3 weeks checks at the most. And then after that, it's a little hard to really provide for their families. So we really took our senior management team. We started to come in probably about two or 3 weeks after, we'll call it the high point, the high water mark, social distance. Candidly, about 3 or 4 of our senior management team did catch the disease. Thank God none of them were significantly impacted, but we did frankly see a couple deaths, throughout the organization and the tribe itself. So very emotional time. 100% the team rose to the equation. And I always looked at it that this is a time where we can show respect, appreciation, and the only thing we hope in the future is that the employees will remember that, the loyalty that we've provided to them to continue to give that great service in the future.
Okay. Let's touch upon the community at large. So let's talk about the importance of community involvement and engagement for a brand. What are some community outreach efforts? How have you honored frontline workers, for instance, or kept guests and fans at the forefront of the brand's efforts?
Well, just for us, today, it's called Testing Tuesdays here in New York City, and they're testing all over the city. And if you go get a test, you're going to get free Yankee gear. We donated that all throughout the city to hospitals, testing sites, in partnership with the city of New York. When we had our opening night, we honored all the great frontline workers here. We partnered with New York City to provide financial relief to businesses that were affected not only by the pandemic, but also by the turbulence and the social unrest that took place in the city. We provided food banks. We're very tied into the city. We have a long connection both here in the Bronx with all the communities and organizations, educational, recreational, religious. Whenever they need help, they call us. We're the largest employer here in the Bronx. So we're pretty wired in. and just trying to be helpful in any way we can.
Jim?
Yeah, very similar. You know, one of the mottos of the Hard Rock brand is love all, serve all is one, save the planet. So philanthropic efforts are something that's very important to us as a brand and has been that way for many, many decades. We looked at, you know, very similar food banks, charitable organization, churches, literally something like, you know, one of the smaller ones, but we received a lot of impact and thanks. You know, so many people started making masks at home, right? You know, so we then started to donate the fabrics. You know, we utilized our purchasing power in order to facilitate, you know, safety gear, you know, obviously all the different things that go with protecting first responders, made just millions and millions of dollars in donations, participating in local food banks and churches, and really activated our employees. Then in addition, we also used our employees where we started to cook for the elders, and we were providing food boxes literally twice a week where someone could come. They literally would pull up to a Hard Rock location, would put a box in the back of their trunk or back seat that had, frankly, everything from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We made special menus. Really turned out well for the elders and some of the less fortunate in the community. And many programs like that, where frankly, they actually then started to become fun events because we are now doing something to help each other. And that's something that is really rewarding in these challenging times.
For sure. So where do the both of you see future success, right? And how have business models changed? I know some things are changed temporarily, but I do believe that this will bring upon some permanent change in the way we all do business. So, you know, whether it's changes in financial strategy, you know, how we look at our models moving forward. And is there anything that we could learn from sort of recovery that we've seen in other areas, whether it's around the world or what have you, that you think we could apply here?
Well, I think that the world has clearly changed, and I'll give you an example. I think more people are going to be working from home rather than going into offices. I think the way they consume entertainment is going to be different. I think I always used to say that I thought the transition from the cable TV model to the streaming model was going to take 10 years. Now I think it's going to take 5, especially young people. But I think the fact that everybody was home, people are consuming entertainment in a different way. You see Disney their first run movies are going on streaming services rather than in the theater. But it's given us an opportunity to realize different forms of entertainment. I think as professional sports merges with mobile betting and gambling, this has kind of given us an opportunity on how to do it, how to make it exciting, more successful. At least in our business, you can't change the fundamentals of the games. But in all our other businesses, you know, we own the S Network, television. I think we've learned through Zoom and other ways how to reach different audiences. I think our hospitality company, you know, Legends Hospitality, which we in the Dallas Cowboys own, has realized how to deliver merchandise and hospitality in a different way. So I think that it's kind of sped up the strategic analysis that you have to do. I don't think you can forget everything, because with a little luck, we'll be back to normal, whatever that normal is, or a different sense of normal. But people will feel free going to hotels or casinos or ballparks and feeling good. So, and to me, it's no big deal to wear a mask. You can still enjoy yourself and eat, and as Jim said, take the temperature, feel comfortable. So I think that the experimentation that's taken place has allowed us to see a little bit of the future, but I think the danger is going too fast into that future, forgetting where you came from.
Interesting.
The fundamentals in March, I think, are still pretty solid here in August.
Yeah.
Thank-
And Jim, strategies in lodging and gaming. I mean, what do you see for the future? What's going to stay? What's going to change?
I would certainly concur that technology is probably the most strategic word that companies can focus on going forward. But I think if we pause and we look at the companies and organizations that are having challenges, not in all, but in many of the sectors, it really deals with their balance sheet. Companies that had strong balance sheets are navigating through this. Companies that were highly levered, whether they're baseball teams or they're, companies like ours, they're the ones that frankly are having more challenges. So we're very proud. Our investment grade ratings, we're the only in the hospitality gaming sector. We've enjoyed investment grade ratings for over 10 years, something we're extremely proud of. They were actually reaffirmed during COVID. So we're not out going to banks looking for money in order to keep the business afloat. So I think that's number one. If there's a learning experience, keep an eye on your balance sheet, because no one in a million years could have ever predicted something like this. So if you are highly levered, just did a transaction and you're levered 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, in our sector, some companies over 10 times, the end is certainly going to be something that's going to be very challenging in the near future versus the ability to navigate through. Secondly is technology. And I think to Randy's point, what you thought technology was going to come about in 5, 10 years, in some cases, specifically internet gaming and sports betting, is now current. Literally, I'm talking to governors that would refuse to have the conversation about sports betting and internet gaming at the end of last year that are saying, Jim, let's meet. Let's talk about alternative ways. We always knew that the casino industry, the integrated resort, 30% of that revenue sometime in the next 5 to 10 years is going to come from online. We operate both online and sports betting in the state of New Jersey, and frankly, have had some really tremendous success. And those numbers there are just skyrocketing. They're not up 50, 60%. They're not up 100%. They're up 300%. And if we look in the capital markets, a few transactions that have actually closed in the last 2-3 weeks, valuations that none of us could ever dream would occur are actually happening. Companies that frankly, in some cases, are a little bit in need of cash, needed of some, liquidating, some assets in order to gain cash. We're getting multiples on revenues in some cases that don't even exist, raising, numbers in excess of $1 billion, $1.5 billion, just based upon the future of technology associated with online activity. Last but not least, in our business, our retail business, online is the way to go. It clearly was and is even more tomorrow in the future. All you have to do is look at the Amazon model. It speaks for itself.
Absolutely. So both Randy and Jim, you both mentioned it, and it's interesting because it's where you guys is where it all intersects, right? So sports betting, right? Talk a little bit about sort of where it's going and its impact on the sports business itself.
I think it's the future. I think it's the future for states, especially now states and cities that have been so hard hit by the shutdown because of the virus. I think there's an opportunity for it. There's a great demand. We're going to rely heavily on Jim Allen and companies, like Hard Rock. That's their business. It's not our business, but we think baseball is prime for mobile betting because you can bet on so many things. It's a game of analytics already today. Young people follow it on all of the statistical possibilities. So you can bet on, is it going to be a strikeout? Is it going to be a curveball or a fastball? Is the ball going to go to right? Is it going to go to left? Is it going to be a pass ball? I mean, on and on and on. And, we have the product, but we're going to need the expertise of somebody like Hard Rock, but there is a giant demand for it. And we think it will help our demographics because it'll make the game more interactive. I mean, today people play fantasy sports all the time. That's a nice word of saying gambling, fantasy sports in a lot of ways. You know, there's just no money going around. So it's the future. I think it's the future for state and local governments because it's a giant revenue source they need. It's really great for all of us in the business because we think it'll bring in new fans, younger fans, and the level of interest will grow. And I think that it's a state by state issue. Each state regulates it. But I think, as Jim said, at least here in New York, there seems to be some real movement. And New Jersey has just been a giant success. Giant success. You know, a couple of months ago in March, you know, you would see people park their car at the foot of the George Washington Bridge, walk over the bridge, do their thing, and come back.
From
What-
a
Yeah,
from a disclosure standpoint, Hard Rock is in a partnership with the Meadowlands, and Randy is 100% right. Frankly, the activity, which has been tremendous. But I think what's more important, it's not just an opportunity for the future, and I do believe that's an accurate statement, but it's here today, and frankly, it's offshore, and there is tens of billions of dollars that are happening as we speak. And for states, or frankly us as a country, to not take advantage of that, and frankly have it properly regulated so that there are integrity checkpoints in any sport, whether it's baseball or football or basketball, golf, tennis, you know, the list goes on and on. But more importantly, it's a new revenue source here in the United States that frankly, all that money is currently happening, going offshore to places like Isle of Man and so many other places that I think elected officials are starting to realize, hey, this is a revenue source where the casino industry, you know, those of us that are in it, there's more integrity here, frankly, than most regulated industries you'll find in the United States. I mean, you look at my background that I have to disclose, you know, and God knows dozens upon dozens of places here in the United States. They have complete access to every penny I make. You don't find that with an offshore bookie, or frankly, at your local bar down the street, you know, that's taking, you know, his manual pool betting on, you know, Sunday football. So 100%, I think the elected officials in many states are receptive. We have to do it the right way. Compliments to the state of New Jersey and frankly, Chris Christie, you know, for fighting that battle for all the way to the Supreme Court. Once that decision occurred, I think it's a new horizon. And to Randy's, you know, comment, now the future is 100% a brand new revenue source, which we're very excited about.
Okay. So when things return to normal, and they will, we don't know what the normal is going to look like yet. How has this changed the way you plan and strategize to account for unknowns? What are some lessons maybe you've learned during this time that you're always going to carry with you?
Well, I just think that something like this is just, I don't know how you plan for it. I guess I heard a story. Jim, I don't know if you know whether this is true or not, but I heard a story that the guys at Wimbledon who run the tennis tournament actually had pandemic insurance, that Lloyd's of London came to them and said, you know, we have all of these items, you want us to throw this pandemic insurance in, and they took it, and they got hundreds of millions of dollars in claims. I don't know if that's a tall story or not, but they're the only person I know who ever had this kind of insurance or thought about it. I think everybody's thinking about it. So I don't know how you prepare for something like this. I think it gives you awareness as to that a pandemic or a global health situation could basically turn you upside down in a matter of weeks. And, you know, as a result, you're trying, as Jim said, you know, be more conservative on your balance sheet and build your cash reserves and watch your spending a little more careful, streamline your staff a little more, make sure you're more efficient, use technology. And we're doing all of those things. But as I said, you know, on March, it was a fundamentally healthy, great, strong company. We were able to weather this, but we can't forget just a few short months ago, how strong we are. So I think it makes us all a little more cautious, a little more conservative, but I don't think you can throw the baby out with the bathwater and forget where you are.
Jim?
Yeah, I think to be flexible, I think that's the key, to be agile, to realize that business is always changing. And, I have this saying, 10 degrees north, 10 degrees south. Never get too excited when things are good. Never get too depressed when things are bad, and just focus on the middle. We immediately looked at our terrorism plans when this started to occur, because we've always been prepared that if there is a major terrorist event at any casino or any large destination, whether it's Universal or Disney, whatever, how are we going to react? What are we going to do? So we had very detailed plans, for that type of potential event. We obviously modified them based upon the pandemic. Randy, I did hear a similar story about Wimbledon. I don't know if it's factually accurate, but if you think about that, if we all had business interruption insurance based upon revenues or EBITDA lost, all the insurance companies would be broke, right? The only way you'd ever get paid is if they were backstopped by the federal government or, governments around the world. So even that, at having the insurance, God only knows what our premiums could be going forward if we wanted to select it. I definitely think that the conversation about challenging acts of God, force majeure, is an interesting conversation. Doesn't necessarily mean that we are right if we're trying to file a claim, or a landlord is wrong, but at least it allows the conversation between, in our case, many times we are the landlord, and many of the cafes were the tenant, right? So we're having to go through every lease, renegotiate, sit down, what's fair, what's not fair, from both sides of the equation. So I think being flexible is really important. And most importantly, not being emotional, navigating a very steady mindset, because frankly, that's what people are looking for. One of the first things I did was started to do WebExes like this with all of our employees. I wanted them to hear from me on an every other week basis. Here's what's happening. Here's what we're doing. And candidly, in the old days, you do a memo, where you, send a letter to their house. But that interactive and that correspondence, we found that to be very soothing for so many of our employees, just to hear that, don't worry, we're going to be okay. We're going to make it through this. Yeah. But I would conclude that there's no manual for this one. This one goes down as, we joke, we've seen hurricanes, we've seen, frankly, terrorist attack, we've seen a lot of things, but this is certainly as unique as, frankly, anyone's ever seen in the last 100 years.
Without a doubt.
For sure.
We probably have time for maybe like 2 more questions or so, because we want to keep you all on schedule. So, Alan, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of our listeners and viewers, we come from a brand business, right? So, how important is a brand during times of crisis, right? So, and what does it mean to stay true to the DNA of your brand, right? So for example, talent may come and go from a brand. Look at a sports team, right? Managers change, players change, personnel may change, but the Yankees are the Yankees. The Yankees have been the Yankees for the last 100+ years, right? It's the brand. Someone once said, right, we root for the laundry, right? So we're rooting for the brand. So the brand doesn't miss a beat, no matter who comes and goes. So, what are some of the strategies to keep that brand DNA so intact? And how do we keep the brand's DNA and the brand top of mind to all of our customers and consumers?
I think, at least here at the Yankees, the brand changes, but the fundamentals are the same. The Yankees are about excellence, the Yankees are about tradition, and the Yankees are about winning and giving our fans all over the world every year the sense that, as the Steinbrenner family has done, since George bought the team, and as Hal and his family do now, that every year we're going to try and win championships, and everything we do is going to measure up to a standard of excellence. And that doesn't matter whether you're in a pre-pandemic or in a pandemic. It's just the circumstances change. I mean, we're playing a very unusual baseball season right now, but the quality of our management, our players is the same. We still want to win the World Series. The way we conduct ourselves with our partners, our sponsors, our broadcast partners, folks like Hard Rock and Jim Allen never changes. We want to see how can we be better, because that's what people expect of us. And we ask them, how do you think? Like we ask Hard Rock all the time. Jim will tell you, how can we be better? We're not insecure. We want to be better.
Right.
So I believe that it goes to your core. I don't think you change strategies. You change tactics during a pandemic or a terrorism situation or a hurricane or whatever the horrible event is, but you don't change your strategy or your brand, what it means, because once you do that, it's not your brand anymore. It's another brand.
Very good points, Jim.
Yeah, boy, we could do 10 shows on this topic because I truly love the conversation because
We'll
people.
have you back for more. We'll have you. Come on back.
But I absolutely love it because people, they will seek out a brand that they trust. They will seek out a brand that is consistent. But if brands do not change with times and they are not current with what the guest wants today, and recognize that your guest today may be slightly different tomorrow. And Hard Rock is a great example of this. If we only played the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Elvis, I can assure you the company would be out of business. It's so important, the event we did with Rock Nation, Jay-Z, and Beyonce last year to raise almost $10 million in one night to be in a partnership with Rock Nation and all the artists that go with that, right? And there's a lot of artists that go with that we're so excited about having that opportunity that you would say, well, that doesn't seem like Hard Rock of, say, the 80s, right? So I think you've got to be cognizant that things are always changing, but never give up on the principles, the integrity, the trust that a brand creates. And there are so many stories where when companies did that, they lost their way, and I don't necessarily want to mention any specifics, but we all can name 5 or 10 great brands, of 10 years ago that are now gone or semi-gone or going to be gone, let alone going back 20 years ago, right? If you think about where did Amazon come from, right? Everyone knows Amazon. Still a great brand, say IBM, but boy, that's a much different company today than what it was 15, 20 years ago. So protecting the brand is the most important thing, making sure that it represents, like what Randy said with the Yankees, it's excellence. They're going for it every year. The fans know it that are baseball diehards, but just in general, I've always said, and I'll conclude with this, go to an airport, see if you don't see someone in a Yankees hat or a Hard Rock shirt or Yankee or Hard Rock shirt, right? Pretty hard to do. You usually see our brands out there because people are proud to wear them, not just because they come to a Hard Rock hotel or casino or cafe, because they like what it represents. And God knows if that's not true with the Yankees, it's not true with any brand in the world.
It's funny you say that. Actually, Alan and I were talking yesterday. We were like, what are we going to wear today? And I said, I'll wear my Hard Rock shirt, and he's going to wear his Yankees hat. We didn't know, but, so we are almost out of time. So I am going to ask one more question. And Jim, I'll start with you, and then Randy, I'll give you the last word. With all the talk of uncertainty and often doom and gloom, what positive message would you like to leave our audience with today? Jim.
Oh, I think the most important thing is we have a lot more things in common with each other than we do differences. And I certainly hope that whatever happens in this upcoming election, that we can maybe go back to basics and really start to look at everyone as individuals and respect individuals as who they are, treat each other the way we want to be treated. And I think that the world, the United States, Hard Rock will be just fine. But it really seems like lately we've lost our way with basic respect. And I'm not referring to Hard Rock because it's something that I preach. Literally, I've got amazing amount of work, you know, with our Black Lives Matter, with our social injustice, with our All Lives Matter teams, so that we can be, you know, spreading the world out there that it's important to really respect each other.
Okay, Randy, last word on this.
I just think that, we're all strong. We've weathered a really tough situation that just came from nowhere. Things are going to get better, and everybody just needs to focus on the positive. We need to remember those who aren't with us, and we need to just learn from where we are and do everything we can to help people and to bring us back, because this is the greatest country in the world. This is a great time. And as Jim said, we have more in common than we have apart. And we all just need to be decent to each other, to be civil to each other, and respect each other. You know, it's okay to agree to disagree. That's what America is about, agreeing to disagree. And I think we've lost a little of that. And hopefully we're all got humbled by this pandemic, and we can all learn from it.
Such great messages to end on. So thank you both, Jim and Randy, again, for your time, your insight, and your experience. We truly appreciate you chatting with us today, and know our audience does too.